Good morning and welcome back. I've decided to rise with the sun today, so hopefully as we kind of progress through the video, we'll see more daylight kind of come on up with us. Um, it's kind of an interesting beginning to my day. I woke up at about 4 o'clock this morning, and I I I mentioned before that my meditation and my prayer don't look as formal as they used to in the past. And so I kind of just took a moment to reflect on a few verses from the Quran and see what impact that has on my day. And it did actually ease my sense of overall well being. I was uploading video 3 yesterday, and it took almost the entire day, even though I had uploaded video 4 and it was like I got through it no problem. But I was really happy that it uploaded finally, and so um, I deleted it, and in so doing, ended up deleting 3 videos that I had kind of planned on posting after it that were supposed to go as 5, 6, and 7 after that fourth one that was talking about uniqueness and dogma. So I'm happy that I was able to kind of get through it and not be upset about it. I just did a quick video on Instagram and just talked about how, you know what, sometimes it's okay for content to just go away. It's maybe better off not being posted. So I'm going to try again. The last video that I had kind of um, talked about ended sort of with conscientiousness and the idea of God, or knowing that God created us with love. So anytime we're going through these difficulties, just know that there is a bigger purpose, that we're not supposed to assume that there, like, the universe is trying to aggravate me, or God hates me, or he's doing this to, take away something that's good for me. It's actually the opposite. If something isn't working out for you, it's probably because it's not beneficial for you. Because that's, if you already are praying like, oh my gosh, I really want beneficial knowledge, because in my mind beneficial knowledge means it's something that's going to evolve with time and it's going to help people grow. So if you lose the content, then it probably means it maybe had something in it that maybe now isn't the time to share. So I figured, okay, fine, I'll just go with it. So with that, I'm trying to understand that unique part of me that maybe I was uh, alluding to, and saying, what is it that is in the world right now, that's in my personal world, that's maybe too general, and God's saying, maybe try this, because you need to find more unique things, unique to you, to talk about or to become, and from there you'll feel a little bit more happy with the way your life unfolds. So being courageous, or having the courage to know this and to recognize this in yourself, is very difficult, because we don't think of it as being brave. um, Courage is something that comes from the heart. And when we are, for example, really impatient or frustrated with something, we think, be patient, because maybe the more patient that you are, the better the reward is that you'll be rewarded with. Like, the universe will just say, well, because you didn't end up hurting the universe by sending out all these negative vibes, then your reward will find itself in an even better way than if you had that meltdown first. So if you think of courage, it means, okay, I'm going to be brave enough. I'm going to try and say, I'm not even going to work up that frustration level in me. I'm just going to kind of think about it and be like, oh my God, again. And so by even taking that almost like calmer approach, allows you to almost laugh at the whole process now, because then it's just like, okay, I'm just going to be playful with God now. I'm just going to laugh as though we're in it together, and maybe my mood will improve. So understanding this, and how, um, if the overall purpose is to train me to have an overall healthy well-being, then it is a big job to be courageous, because you have to understand that, knowing the importance of not always having a meltdown is as important as it is to realize the detrimental effects stress has on your body. So being that angry and being that quick to have a temper isn't necessarily healthy. The more you're able to be patient and kind of put off anger, the healthier it actually is for your body. Because when you're stressed, your body actually floods with cortisol, which is a hormone that isn't healthy at all for your body. And it's when you have it in your body, it tends to make you very sick. So just something to keep in mind. Like, it's almost like coming up against all these brick walls, as they were, that I call them. It helps me re-identify the reason that uh, I'm trying to almost outrun my history of what I talked about with like a land of the pharaoh, as you can imagine. I guess I was part of. So I want to maybe kind of segue into the purpose of making or writing a journal. So sometimes we don't really know that it's important, and depending on your age and where you are in life, sometimes you might not think that you need it for one way or another, or for one reason or another. But again, part of the purpose of being a little bit proactive in this endeavor could be that if you're in a good place already and you're starting to write, your positive affect will be something for you to kind of fall back on in the future if you are having one of these dark moments or like these difficult moments, and you want to remember what it was like to have a happy mood, like what you sounded like to yourself. So with doing that, you can almost remember, I remember being in a good mood. Like, what was it that used to allow me to have that good mood and sustain it? And maybe I can try to work backwards and find that place in me again. And sometimes you can relate to stories, like in your journal. You can say, um, I don't really have much to say right now, but I'm looking for inspiration because I want to use my imagination. So I'm going to think of a story that I used to like as a child. So you can start writing about Little Red Riding Hood, for example. Like, that's such a favorite story for me, and I don't even remember the whole gist of it. Maybe I'll go watch it like as a cartoon, or I'll find a novel or like a book of fairy tales or fables, and I'll just almost uh, have that memory recall where you kind of jog your memory as to what was it about these stories that kind of resonate with me and stay with me over time. And then you'll be able to actually draw new conclusions about what the stories originally were about, right? So and then you can start to think, well, what makes a good story anyway? Like, why why are these stories short and sweet, but they have lots of story or lots of lessons in them? And so that could be something about what brevity is, and like what is it about a concise story that carries a lot of different lessons that's really attractive to us, kind of like studying of poetry that I think we talked about a little bit. um, Also, you can start thinking about wanting to write stories yourself. And so all of these things, because they're almost allowing your mind to relax enough to almost delve into its own creativity and its own consciousness, will be its own therapeutic effect for you. And then again, remember the effects of fasting and delayed gratification. So if you do find that, you know what, it's not working for me, and I'm still stressed, or I'm still mad, or I am in a good place and I'm just not interested, that's fine. Sometimes just starting it and then coming back to it like a day or two later, or a week, or even a month later is fine. Sometimes I would actually write about the mood I'm in. So I just the process of writing is its own therapy too. So I'd write like, I don't really feel like doing anything today. I don't even feel like writing. I don't even know what to write about. And then I'll just let my mind just kind of ramble on, as it were, right? And then before you know it, you actually start to have entries. And um, the reason for doing this is it helps us remember the human part of us. We're so used to being on YouTube where everything's polished, everything's ready made. We don't see the editing process or even the bloopers very much anymore, right? So remembering that part of us is almost allowing ourselves to give ourselves a break. Like, life is messy. Life is allowed to have these moments of boredom, as it were. You know, all these things that we kind of don't let ourselves see in other people is important for us to see in ourselves, because then we're not so hard on ourselves anymore. So I want you to think of, for example, what it means to set goals for yourself, and maybe why you might want to journal that and have that as something that's like a vision that you can constantly work towards, or like a goal that you can work towards, and why having it as something that you can constantly look at is important. Um, my dad used to tell me that if you don't have a goal, someone's going to create a goal for you, and they're going to use you to their advantage or to their end. So in some way, you've almost lost your own life by doing that. You don't want to do that. Your own time, like we mentioned, is yours on earth. God created you because He already knows that I'm creating you as a omnipotent power, which is a power that has all this power. And the reason I have you here is for you. You have a purpose in the world for you. And if it is part of it is to help people, then that's fine. But you don't have to forget yourself. So be charitable with yourself as much as you are willing to be charitable with other people. So think about, for example, if you want to travel somewhere, right? If you are interested in a certain culture, for example, because maybe you did a study at school or you have friends from that place, just talk about it and just say, I wonder what it is like to live in this place, and why they speak a different language, and why they wear these kind of clothes, or why they eat this at lunch. Like I noticed some of my friends eat this and it smells really good. So all of these things that almost prime our mind to look for diversity is really important, because sometimes when we're looking for a way to stand out, we did maybe feel overtrenched in our own tradition, and we just want to write it off, and we don't realize maybe how enriching it can be. Almost comparing and contrasting it with someone else's helps you appreciate what you actually have as well. So I talked about this when I was learning about Hinduism, and I studied, and I already went in kind of having a fair amount of knowledge about my own tradition and faith. So a lot of what I had understood going in was based on just rulings, like just basic rulings that were derived from scripture on how to get through your day. So, why prayer is important, why ritual fasting is important, um, why uh, the whole faith tradition is almost entrenched in your day. So it's difficult to almost like pull it out of you, right? You can't say that I'm just Muslim for part of the day, if that were the word, right? But what I lacked was a kind of spiritual understanding. So some people call it mysticism, which is a type of understanding that is very, very deep for you, and it has specific meaning. So it's almost like when I'm praying, what am I thinking about now? Sometimes you're just really busy, you're just going through the routine, it becomes a habit, your mind almost checks out, and you're just like, I just have to get through this and I have to get back to what I was doing. But from the Hindu perspective, it was almost to remind us, or it helped me remember, the attributes of God and what they understand behind the different icons that they build, almost as a way to focus on certain meanings. So it's not something to worship, really. It's almost to say, when I'm thinking about something that I'm struggling with, this picture, for example, is going to help me remember all the different attributes of power, for example. So, in that sense, you can understand why in some traditions, art is a very, very, it's very diverse and it's very deep, and you almost, when you look at it, you almost have to gaze at it for a very long time to try to understand like how the meaning kind of comes to you. So, with talking about how the best way to understand like Sufi understandings, or different depths of meaning, sometimes the best approach is to uh, compare it with something else. I guess I was saying is that with it doesn't have to be anything with scripture. Sometimes it can be poetry, like if you're looking at different topics or different stories, and just finding something to compare and contrast will help you kind of have an in as to where should I guide my thinking, or how can I begin um, just thinking about imagination, and how people in the past used to almost want puzzles to kind of puzzle through to kind of give them new ideas about where should I direct my life and how should I build a goal. So I did get this is kind of like a segue into that, but it's almost like breaking a mindset. I don't know if you can see this, but anyway, I went to the library yesterday and I got this book called Mindset, and it's by John Naisbitt, I guess I'm saying it correctly, I hope. And in doing that, it's 1963 that this book was published. So it kind of helped me remember that. Um, I think one of the videos in the past I was talking about how going back into tradition can be helpful in understanding how to resolve contemporary context. Because if we say that tradition started 2,000 years ago, and we're trying to understand that we evolved with that, but we try to want to let it go, then if we're in a contemporary context, it would make sense to kind of go back and revisit, well, why do we believe this anyway? And then, wait, do we need to do that? Because does it even apply anymore? So it's not necessarily what the outcome is going to be. It's almost just putting in the effort to see, well, why do we think the way that we do? And how did this tradition evolve, as it were, to the present day? And what am I supposed to do with it? Because if I started, for example, understanding that we came from the earth, which means that our bodies are made up of different minerals, then to understand who I am is to say, well, what is it that I eat? Yeah, a lot of the things are planted, and even if they're not planted, they're planted uh, for other animals to eat. So animals eat the plants, and then we eat the animals. So it's almost like we are from the earth and we come back from the earth. So understanding that cycle helps us kind of create that closure within us as to how does nature work, and how do we align with the universe to make meaning for ourselves that is easy to kind of continue to build on as a foundation without feeling like if we lose this story because we had a conversation with somebody, then we feel ungrounded again. And then I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to think about this anymore, because it can be frustrating. And I went through that. It took me 12 years to kind of resolve how to break myself down and then build up again and then break myself. And just in doing that, you end up having a schema in the back of your mind that you can relate to a lot of different things at the same time without feeling like you have to sacrifice any one particular thing. So one good way of doing this is that when you do study historical figures, is to focus on one, but also, like I said, contrast it with other ones and try to keep it diverse, because you'll find that you might want to pull one characteristic from one historical figure and say, I want to align with this focus that he had or that she had, and see how I can maybe work towards becoming that or something akin to that. But because you're just pulling a segment of what they were and you don't really necessarily know their context yet, you might find yourself being top heavy or swayed in a certain way that maybe you need to complement in a different way to keep you contemporary. So just making sure that you're that kind of, you build kind of like a mosaic almost, like just make it almost like a mismatched puzzle that you yourself put together. So then it really does enrich who you become and how you think and the way you want to interact with the world and see. So breaking your mindset is kind of a good segue that I'm going to try anyway, because I've been trying to find ways to almost break myself out of a rut. And so as you can see, like I've been trying like these videos and trying different topics around them. I joined Facebook and Instagram just about a month ago, maybe a little bit more than a month ago now. And so breaking the norm of what my habitual day was like is almost a way to see like what resource do I have at my disposal, and what is it that I can continue doing that I don't necessarily understand is a habit that might not be productive for me. So kind of building on what dogma is they're just practices that aren't really useful for me, but I just assume that they should hold true. Like if you don't have a job, you have to wait so many months before you can find a new one. Maybe that's an average, that's good, but it doesn't have to apply to me necessarily, right? Maybe it's just to say, instead of working for somebody, I have to find a way to make money on my own, like start an online business, for example. So anything that, for example, you never used to think of for yourself, and you find yourself assuming, maybe I do need to start doing this now for myself, then that's enough of a beginning. Like, I never used to think of myself as starting my own business because I'm the type of person that if I have too much thoughts on my mind, it's very difficult for me to focus. So I almost appreciate that I can go to work, finish work, leave work at work, and then come home and then focus on my personal development. So because that was so high on my priority list, thinking about taking work home was something that I was never really encouraged to even think about, or like there's no way, I don't think I ever want to do that at any point in my life. But now that I see the fluidity that can um, almost unfold as you start to build who you are and talk about it online, and then maybe eventually put it together to build a mini course to help others, it almost becomes, like I mentioned before, the way your ritual practice or your habitual practice about your spiritual meaning and life is. It just all becomes very interconnected and it fits. And so you don't really have to sell it as much. You just have to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what works for me. And if people find that I want to try that, then they have something to learn from you. You have something to learn from them, because their context is going to be something that you learn from. And in that way, we continue to evolve with what looks like the kind of global network now that kind of builds with um, allowing, I think, more feedback from people to build what the internet is, as it were, like AI technology or artificial intelligence, like building those algorithms that just pull almost certain kinds of information and group them together and make them more readily available to whoever is looking for a certain topic or information on that topic. So just to, I'm gonna close on that and hopefully take a break. I'm going to see if I can build around this. I read just a little bit of the introduction, and it does look like it allows us to kind of think in the stream of line that I'm hoping to continue thinking, where the author, he takes, for example, television and TV, and he goes through and talks about the process of the evolution of it. So he said the helicopter, for example, started off as a toy helicopter, and then it became an actual hovering aircraft, right? So he says it's not our feet that move us along, it's our minds. So sometimes we say, like that idiom, put yourself in someone's shoes, right? That's a good idea because sometimes it's a way of expressing empathy. Like if you were standing there in that person's position, how would you feel if this person did this? But if you think of it one step further and you say, um, before I take a next step, I want to think where my mind would take me if I did that. So it's almost like thinking about something is going to continue evolving something or an idea until it becomes almost like the more correct choice of what that original idea was. So talking about making choices with forethought, so consequent, like with the consequences of what they might end up being. So sometimes I think I'm going to go to the gym even though my back is sore. You can think, I want to go to the gym because I need to improve my mood, but if my body's not ready, it's not fully repaired yet, am I going to feel better with a workout, or do I need more rest? And I just have to figure out a different way to exercise and feel better about my mood. So it is that building on that delayed gratification of fasting, where you need to understand to not follow your impulse control right away and give yourself time to think about something, and then, okay, this is what I'm planning to do. I know I might lose my momentum or not be motivated, so I have to keep in mind that hold yourself accountable. But really, before I follow a decision, is it really the best decision for me? And that takes time because if your mind isn't um, used to maintaining interest in something or keeping attention for a long time, you will lose interest and you'll just be like, I give up. So almost give yourself a time limit. Like say, okay, I'm gonna 10 minutes. That's all I have. So I'm gonna think about something. I'm gonna plan it. I'm gonna walk away for like 2 minutes, maybe go have a cup of orange juice. I don't know, go outside, put something in the recycle bin, and then come back and then revisit it again and say, okay, how did my motivation change? And if you feel like, no, I don't want to just because now I'm lazy, I don't want to, then you should probably push yourself into it. But if you feel like, no, I think I probably need another day of rest because my back is still making it really difficult for me to walk properly. So maybe it needs a little bit more rest for the muscles to repair, and then I can give myself um, another try tomorrow. So in so doing, you're consciously thinking with your brain out loud, and sometimes thinking out loud actually reinforces for your brain what to do. So read about it, and you'll find that these little tidbits help your mind focus and help you remain true to what your goal is and how to evolve with it, as it were. And we'll see you next time.